creatures. But first, join us as we discuss David Huggins and how he met his future lover, Celeste. Crescent. Thank you. Jasmine would join us this evening. She is currently being taken hostage by our cat, who's firmly in her lap and very asleep and very cute. Okay. So, as we learn about Crescent, we discuss Love in an Alien Purgatory, the life and fantastic art of David Huggins. And if anyone here is watching who has a good amount of money and wants to give me a Christmas present, any of these paintings, please. Dear Lord. I should begin. I'll read from the back. In 1951, a young boy in rural Georgia was visited and abducted by a group of alien visitors from another dimension. This contact resulted in over several decades of continued contact and resulted in the birth of more than 60 hybrid children in one of the most remarkable stories in all of UFO lore. Love in an Alien Purgatory is the startling pictorial account of David Huggins' hidden life, as revealed in his own vivid and sometimes disturbing paintings. With commentary and text by UFO investigator Farah Urdozu, David's story takes the reader into a world between two dimensions. A purgatory of hope, sex, fear, and ultimately, love. Let's begin, shall we? We'll focus on his childhood encounters this evening. David's first experiences with the visitors from another world started when he was 8 years old. It was the summer of 1951. He was living on a farm in the Georgia countryside. On that day, he was playing by himself around a tree near the barn when he heard someone say, "David, behind you." He turned back and saw the short being with thick, dark brown colored hair coming closer to him. When he looked at the creature's large, glowing eyes, David, scared, found himself unable to move. Eventually, he escaped. Later in the afternoon, he returned to the spot where he had seen the creature, and yes, it was still there. It came out from the trees and looked at him. Terrified, David ran into the house. For some reason, he never said anything to his parents about what he saw and forgot about this incident. But it was not the last time David would see the creature he called the hairy guy, the owl in the tree. That same night, David woke up in the middle of the night. When he looked out his window, David noticed an owl with very large glowing eyes on a tree just outside his window. The owl was looking directly at him, and David stared right back at him. The rest of the night, David's mind was occupied by a very strange dream about a group of tiny men coming in his room. When they got close to his bed, the dream ended. The dream was repeated the following nights. The insect-like being. One afternoon, David came to the barn to get his softball. When he heard a scraping sound, coming from the other side of the building, he walked around and was shocked to see what awaited him. A giant praying mantis. It looked at David and sprayed a bluish-gray fluid on him. He jumped back and escaped screaming. It did not follow him. Still shaking with fear and his heart pounding, David noticed that the blue fluid had left no stains on his shirt and pants. He would later see the insect-like being many more times. 8 floating grays. David was amusing himself, looking for arrowheads in the field behind his house. Suddenly he looked up, and he saw 8 little gray beings wearing blue jumpsuits, slowly floating gently down from the sky. They had large heads with almond-shaped black eyes. After landing gently on the ground, they ran towards him. David panicked and started to run home. When he looked over his shoulder, he watched the group of Greys suddenly disappear into the air, becoming invisible as if they were behind a curtain. The young David thought this was a very, very good magic trick. This was David's first daytime experience with Grey aliens. 5 pairs of blue legs. Like many houses in the area, David's family home rested on cinder blocks, creating a crawl space about 3 feet high beneath it. David hid on the opposite side of the house from the strange visitors. Eventually, they walked up to the house and stayed there for a while. He was able to see their legs. After a short while, they turned and walked away. David went to his bedroom and looked from the window. The field was empty, and the visitors were gone. Nighttime visitors. Later that night, David awoke with a start. Through his bedroom window, he saw a big UFO hovering in the air just above a full moon. A group of Greys were standing outside looking at him through the window. When he made eye contact with them, he suddenly felt his fear melt away. One of them walked up the steps, opened the door, and came inside. Time to go. They came to take David on his first journey of what would become an incredible lifetime adventure. David remembers being held by 3 Greys who carried him smoothly and easily into the air. One other escorted the group, as if directing them. David looked down to see the house, trees, and fields getting smaller and smaller. Above them in the sky, the huge oval object waited for them. David didn't see any doors or windows on the surface of the glowing UFO. Then, without David being aware of how it was done, they were suddenly inside the craft. First meetings. David found himself inside a large, metallic-looking room. It reminded him of a doctor's office. He was next to a short Grey, whom David believed to be a little boy, just like himself. And there was a woman, too. She had both human and alien features. Later, David would call her Crescent. David looked at them and asked the Grey being, "Is that your mom?" Both the Grey alien and Crescent smiled silently. David noticed a long, thin tube in Crescent's hand. There were 2 more tubes on a stool behind her. Implant. The Grey being took hold of David's arms and held him as Crescent inserted the tube into his nostril. There was resistance, so she pushed it hard. Something in his nose gave way with a crunch. She removed the tube and let the Grey let David go. David started crying. "You hurt me! You hurt me!" When Crescent began to rub his nose and David looked into her eyes, his fears disappeared and he stopped crying. She leaned towards David and he was momentarily aware that she was removing his memory of the incident. Crescent. David believes that Crescent is a hybrid being. With her pale skin and large eyes, she has both alien and human features. She has a small nose and thin lips, and her hair looks like a wig, as if she is affecting it for the sake of appearing more human. David thinks that Crescent is an old being with a very old soul. Crescent would eventually become David's protector, guide, teacher, lover, and later, the mother of many children they had together. David became hers in every meaning of the word, as she led him through the alien purgatory of his secret life. A life that for years was secret even to him. Watching the Earth. That same night, David met another being in the UFO. This tall, almost human-looking man gave David an impression of authority. The being talked about the Earth, space, and space travel. This image was the last memory of David's first otherworldly trip. He doesn't remember how he got back home. The next morning, he woke up in his bed with a slight nosebleed. And if you want to find out how the story ends, you'll have to get the book.